This is what it sounds like when you have more certainty about your role as a parent in conflict with your teen.
And again, you're not supposed to walk away having resolved this family conflict. You're supposed to walk away having established a pattern of being able to talk about the hard stuff and having it not go badly.
Welcome to the Turning Winds podcast. My name is Kevin Zundel. Turning Winds has a full continuum of care for teens that would benefit from life-changing support clinically and academically. Today, I speak with Jared Sartell, who is an LCSW and Director of Clinical Programming on campus, and dive into what our roles as parents are throughout the treatment and healing journey. So, Jared, I think one of the things that I think almost gets too much focus is all the attention gets put on the teen, and it's not reflective of reality, which is that there's an environment of success that happens, which includes all the team members there, but also includes the family members themselves and their role. So one of the things I wanted to explore with you is what is that role throughout the entire journey, starting from what are the markers as a parent to go, I should probably talk to someone else because they're not clinicians themselves. So they're not going to know all the things to look for and exactly what to do. Starting at the beginning of that journey, as a parent, what are the types of things that are those clues to say something's off that really needs more than the attention that's being given now?
Yeah, it's a good question. What we do in treatment, and this is the treatment world at large, is we identify when concerns become disruptive to daily living. And then for parents to recognize, and this is difficult to do because we don't always like looking at ourselves, but to recognize how may I be contributing to the issues where life is starting to be disrupted. And so it's really, for every scenario, it's a little different. You have to know your child well. You have to be an active parent. You have to know who they are as a human being and be keyed into who they are as a human being. Have to be active in setting boundaries and expectations, having important roles for your child to play that are developmentally appropriate for them, that make them contribute in a meaningful way in your home and in life. It's interesting when we think about having kids, and we eventually, or even in the beginning, we may have a vision of them being adults and being married and or having long-term relationships and all that. But it's easy to forget to parent in that way. And especially as they become adolescents, the needs that they have developmentally shift. And it can be easy to forget that our role is to develop them into people that can more or less function on their own with calibrated expectations, right? And so the expectations for a 13-year-old might be different from a 12-year-old. And so it's important I'll go back to this, and everything we do at Turning Winds is about our relationship. And so say I'm working with a 15-year-old that's on my caseload and he's brand new on my caseload and I don't know him. My job is to develop a relationship with that kid and to take the information that I've gotten and have a clinical understanding or some clinical impressions that as I get to know this person, develop a real relationship with them, my understanding from a clinical standpoint of what their issues are will actually change. And that underscores the need for parents to be active with their kid in a way that's developmentally appropriate. And they have a level of intimacy where they really know who their child is. And so having that relationship is what will, I believe, allow parents to recognize okay, this is beyond regular teenage stuff, or this is beyond the typical sort of things that we would expect from a teenager. I think it's also important that parents learn about and study adolescent development because what you can see is parents tend to fall into two camps. One is they're hyper anxious, maybe in their own life, but then also about their kid. And so they pathologize all sorts of things that are fairly normal. Or parents may be on the totally opposite spectrum is they're detached, or they're so like roll with it. They don't realize, oh, things are going wrong here, or they have the potential to go really wrong. And so having a good understanding of adolescent development is really important. I can't count how many times on my hands I've said to a parent, they're a teenager, right? When they voice a concern or whatever. And so helping them discern, and I guess this is an important point, is when they recognize that they might need help discerning the difference. Like most of us have pretty decent guts, and we can tell, oh, that's pretty normal for a 15-year-old boy, or that's not actually very normal. I'm going to talk to some other people that might know. And so I think with parents, that's a tipping point of, you know what, I'm not actually sure if this is normal, so I'm going to talk to some. And so we spend a lot of time at Turning Winds helping parents understand what's normal, what's not normal, how they may be contributing to cause it to become abnormal or maladjusted. We operate under what's called a family systems theory. And what that means is we're not just dealing with the student or helping manage the student that's in our program, seeing them as a cog in a family system. And so we do a lot of work with families to help them recognize what their roles are. And even if they're not getting it wrong, how to tweak it in this area, or how to lubricate this, or how to adjust this in order to shift the dynamic enough for the student to be more likely to change what they need to change. And as the treatment process, due to financial concerns, becomes shorter and shorter, it actually increases the need for parents to be involved in that process, to be willing to look at themselves, to be willing to make changes within how they operate and the functioning of their home in order to enable their child to reintegrate back into their home. Now it's the kid's responsibility to reintegrate back into the home, but it's valuable for parents to recognize, okay, if I tweak this over here, it'll make them more successful, if that makes sense. And the trick is, if you have multiple kids, they're all different. You know this, Kevin, is each of our kids have a completely different personality. And so the needs of my 18-year-old who just graduated high school, completely different than my 10-year-old son, who is just a totally different personality style. So I have to approach my parenting with him completely differently. Otherwise, it's all sorts of chaos and drama. and so parenting is tough. And so that question of where's the line between needing help and not needing help, it's difficult to answer, because it really comes down to, what do we know about teenagers and development, human development? What do we know about our own self and the things that we might do that contribute to chaos in our homes? And what's our capacity for discerning what's normal and what's not normal?
Yeah, and I think that's when it gets to the heart of the parent isn't the expert at understanding how to navigate it all, and change is difficult, and is now the time that I make a decision to act. In talking to all the parents that I have, perception of the barrier is higher than it really is. That, there's someone out there who can help you and talk to you and has gone through this every single day for years and years, and they can help you with it. And it's going to feel weird to pick up the phone and call, but once you do it, you're going to say, what was stopping me? Because I think about the timeline of it, and we always talk about, okay, these are the final years, and my older son is just about to complete his freshman year. So it's the reality is setting in that time is finite.
Yeah.
And what are the things? So when I talk about with my wife, a lot of times it's, okay, what she's looking for is different from what I'm looking at. If he's staying up gaming, then we have to turn off the internet. Yeah, that's one approach, but are we really helping him grow? Is self-agency the goal, not getting a night from the internet? For the grades, how do we get them to work towards it themselves, as having just carrots and sticks involved? And I think when you look at, is it time for a course correction? In the beginning, yes, we're just a little off course, and the delta is just a little bit off. But you go a year and now you're quite far off. And so there is a benefit to start to see it going, not waiting a year or 2 or 3 years and doing that. So for me as a parent, that's what I'm trying to look for. But then as they go they're in treatment, what are the different ways that they can be active? What is the family's role? And what are the questions they ask? And what's the most important thing you find yourself telling them where they get it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we oftentimes if we know a student is enrolling, we give parents clinical homework to do. We assign them to read a book called Not by Chance by Dr. Tim Thame. And so this book, it outlines the basic treatment process and outlines the sorts of things that you can expect as a parent from a good quality treatment program. It outlines what your role is in that process. And even more importantly, it outlines how to plan and prepare for an effective transition after treatment. And so we expect a lot from our parents, actually, is we invite them. One, we build relationships with them, just like we do with the students. Without a relationship, good treatment can't actually happen. And so we build relationships with the parents, and we help them start identifying ways that they may have contributed to things going south. Whether you're an anxious father and that anxiety bleeds off onto your kid, or whether you're a super permissive mother or whatever, and how that might set the kid up for struggles. And we help them shore up their skill sets. And so have parents participate in weekly family therapy. And at least a chunk of that therapy is offering them some thoughts and some observations and potentially some things for them to practice in their weekly conversations with their kids. Maybe tweak your language a little bit in this way, or maybe offer more praise, or maybe offer less praise, or just different ways of changing the system. And so parents, they have a responsibility to be willing to change their system, even if there wasn't anything, quote, wrong with their system. It's not actually about whether it was right or wrong. It's whether it's effective or not with that kid. And just like my wife and I, you're talking about you and your wife trying to figure out like how to do this. You're both probably right. And my wife and I have different ideas of how to approach each of our kids. And so we spitball. But the important principle is the willingness to change things up in order to see if we get a different result. And now that we've been parents for 18 years, and we're realizing, oh, okay, there are some things that are pretty universal that work pretty well within our household. And there are some major deviations we have to do with this kid or with this kid. I'll give you an example. So I have a son that's 10 years old, and he is his own man, period. And so the way that we parent him is not the traditional power structure. It all has to be like he has to be the one to decide to do whatever it is we're wanting him to do. And so with him, it's very practical. It's pragmatic. If you want access to the privileges that you enjoy, you go through us by doing the things that we want. And it's very practical. And there are times where he will choose, okay, I'll put on a shirt to go to my sister's graduation. I'll put on a collared shirt because I want to have access to Dude Perfect on YouTube, right? And oftentimes it's that pragmatic. More often than not, he chooses to do the things that we want him to do in order to gain access to the things that he wants. He also understands that we are willing to restrict the access to the things that he wants. If he doesn't, it's transactional with him. And we have good, loving relationships, and all of that is intact. But from a parenting sort of discipline, I have a daughter that's 14 years old, and she's a reader, prolific reader, and she's a headspace, like head case. So she's super spacey. And so she's the kid that will walk from one room to another and completely forget what it was that she was asked to do. And she has taken up running and cross country, but she loves doing it, but kind of needs to be pushed. And she'll pick up a book and forget that she was going to go for a run. And so with her, it's a totally different parenting style. You have to go for a run every day before you can read, which seems weird from a parenting standpoint, but it adjusts her to, you have to take care of some of your business before you can go into zoning out and reading it. And so that's contingent upon they're two different people. And my wife and I have invested our relationship with them to know who they are as people. And so as parents, we have to be willing to do that. We have to be willing to separate from our employment to a degree that will allow us to invest in our kids as people, or to set boundaries with maybe a social circle or whatever it is that we're into, because it's important for us to have our own lives. Well, we have to have a healthy investment and understanding of who each child is individually. And again, that's how you're going to be able to tell. Like with Juliana, I know her well enough that if she deviates in a way that is disruptive, I'll know that it's outside her norm. And that's when I'll go, hey, Amanda, what do you think about this? Or, hey, Kevin, I'm in this situation. What do you think? And start spitballing with other people because I've noticed a deviation. And so in treatment, in the beginning stages of treatment, that's what we ask of parents is don't worry about doing heavy family therapy, meaning dive into talking about really heavy stuff. It's get to know your kid. Use the initial stages of family therapy to just start having interactions that you're glad that you had, because you probably weren't doing them before your kid came to treatment. And we will let you know when it's time to shift into more heavy lifting, because without establishing that relationship, you're not actually going to be able to do any of the real work. And family therapy specifically is not actually about solving problems in therapy. It's about practicing talking about hard things so that you're capable of doing it in a healthy way when you don't have a therapist present. And so understanding that. And so we do a lot of coaching of parents as, oh, you're coming in too hot. You're going to ruin it in the beginning stages. And again, like, you're not supposed to walk away having resolved this family conflict. You're supposed to walk away having established a pattern of being able to talk about the hard stuff and having it not go badly. And so those are some of the major expectations or things that will help parents be successful earlier on.
If this conversation inspires you to take the next step and get help for your teen, I highly encourage you to pick up the phone and call Turning Winds at 800-845-1380. Don't forget to check out other resources available to you, including episodes of this podcast, especially my conversation with world-renowned Dr. Foster Cline, pioneer of Love and Logic on raising responsible teens. There's a wealth of resources available to you at turningwinds.com.